Hello, everyone, and welcome to Context. This program is brought to you by the Idaho Humanities Council with funding from the National Endowment for the Humanities. The views expressed here today do not necessarily represent those of the IHC or the NEH. My name is Joanna Bringhurst, and joining us today is Blake Lingle. Blake is the founder and owner of the Boise Fry Company, plus a couple bars and other businesses. He's also the author of Fries, an illustrated guide to the world's favorite food. When he's not making delicious taters, you can find him hitting the slopes, coaching youth soccer, or hanging out with his beautiful wife and children. Blake, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about the glorious French fry.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I will say probably everyone that I know would list French fries in their top 3 favorite foods. So
Yeah,
we obviously need to delve deep here and figure out what it is about French fries that has captured all of our hearts.
yeah, absolutely.
So not everyone who loves French fries has opened a restaurant devoted to fries or written a book about them, but you have done both. What is it about fries that has captured your heart?
Yeah, I'd say sort of kind of two stories. When I was little, my parents worked really hard. My dad was finishing his degree. My mom ran a daycare out of our house. So at the time, it was kind of a big deal to go out to eat really anywhere. We just didn't necessarily have the money for all that. And so like when we did, my parents occasionally would give us a choice, and me and my younger siblings would usually pick at the time McDonald's. It was like such a big deal. In fact, my parents still joke that like when I was really young and we would be driving around, I would always say that, oh, I can't live in a town that doesn't have a McDonald's. And so I think from a young age, I really just almost romanticized McDonald's fries. And it just was such a good memory for me because it was one of the kind of cool outings that we could do as a family when we were really young, is go to McDonald's. And then, yeah, so that was, yeah, a treat for me. It was definitely, kind of this once in a while family outing that we did. But then later in life, my love affair with fries continued, but I guess maybe got a little bit more sophisticated. And after college, I got my first job working in Washington, D.C. And then, there was these two restaurants kind of right next to each other that I really liked. And one had the really good burger, one had the really good fries. And I remember at the time thinking, it's so weird that you never really get to choose your fries. They're just kind of thrust upon you. You get what you get. And that was really the simple idea behind Boise Fry. I wrote it down in a notebook, and I was like, I wonder if you could have a restaurant where you choose your fries. And that was really it. The fry book came a little bit later because I was approached by the publisher, Princeton Architectural Press, after I had done this segment with Fabio Viviani. He was on Top Chef back in the day. And they did this like Yahoo on the road thing where he went to restaurants and cooked with folks. And then they went to a concert, the Lumineers played. And then I think I know the Princeton Architectural Press saw that segment, and they reached out and they're like, hey man, have you ever thought about writing a book on fries? And I hadn't at the time, but I was like, oh sure, I'd like to do that. I like writing. And that was it.
Awesome. Well, I have to admit, one of my favorite French fries at Boise Fry Company is actually the Brussels sprouts. And
Yeah.
once you try them, you cannot
Yeah.
quit and you have to go back again and again. So
Well,
I think we actually need to decide on a working definition of fries because I don't think most people would say fried Brussels sprouts count as French fries. So what is your definition of a fry?
yeah, that's definitely a tough one. I would say I take the broader definition. So I would count Brussels sprouts. I tend to think of almost any vegetable sliced and fried as a fry. For example, yams, or which a lot of people confuse for sweet potatoes. They're not even in the potato family. And I would say 99% of people would consider yam or sweet potato fries, correct? And so if you extrapolate that a little bit, include more vegetables, that would be my broad definition. Like in the book, I talk a little bit about like, could sliced bread be considered a fry if you're going to slice bread and then fry it? But I tend to stick with just vegetables sliced and fried.
Okay, I like that definition because it includes the Brussels sprouts
Good Brussels sprouts.
plus
Yeah.
the bacon jam. Just trust me, people, you need to have this in your life.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
we should also talk about the name. We say French fries here in
Mhm.
the United States, but many nations have actually claimed to have invented the fry. So who has the best claim, in your opinion?
Ooh, that's a real tough one. And I think too, this would probably go back to the definition. Like if you take kind of my more broad definition of a vegetable, like a vegetable that's been sliced and fried, then geez, I don't know, you could probably claim that ancient Egypt or ancient Rome have the claim, because, there's definitely documents both in the Bible and afterwards that talk about frying vegetables, cutting and frying vegetables. And so you could say that, chances are they actually have the original claim. But I think if you're going to go with like the more traditional fry, which is like a white flesh potato, then I would think probably Belgium or France has the strongest claim. It's possible actually even Spain or Portugal were frying potatoes before that. But I don't think they were even like intentionally like creating the fry. They were just, putting potatoes, sliced potatoes in dishes, and that's all it was. But, you see evidence with both Belgium and France that they were like starting to document it. They were starting to write recipes like, hey, slice a potato, fry it. They even had some that referenced breading the potato and then frying it. And, Belgium, of course, claims that it was really Americans that confused the whole situation. Like they really invented the fry. But during World War II, the Americans came over and they were listening to French-speaking Belgians, and they were eating fries, and they were like, "Oh, those are French fries," and they were just they were confusing the Belgians for French, and that's how that moniker French fries came to being. When I did the book and I was doing some research, I would say France probably has the cleanest and earliest references to recipes. And maybe they have the strongest claim overall because they have some real clear, like even Thomas Jefferson, when he came back as an ambassador, he even referenced it, like some recipes that he saw when he was in France. So they definitely have the best documentation, but I think the Belgians are probably more passionate about it. So yeah.
Passion usually wins the day, I think.
Yeah.
Were those first French fries like what we're eating today when we think of French fries, or what were they like?
For sure. Very similar, honestly. And of course it depends on where you get your fries from. Like certain fries are produced different than other fries, but honestly, they're not like the first are not too dissimilar. Excuse me. The first recipes I found, they had like real simple ingredients. It was like potatoes sliced and then fried. And then another one I saw was like potatoes battered or sliced, battered, and then fried. And honestly, that's a lot of fries. I mean, that's really similar to how we do it at Boise Fry Company to this day.
That's cool. Many people know that Idaho has a special connection to French fries because our own J.R. Simplot played an important part in mass producing French fries. Can you explain that history?
Yeah, actually, absolutely. JR was a boss. He really, him and his top scientists, they essentially figured out how to mass produce fries, which is incredible. I think it started with, they kind of figured out a way to circulate and purify oil, which made it easier to continue to kind of like mass produce fries versus, the old school way of doing it is you'd fry a bunch of fries until the oil got bad or dark, and then you take it out and you do it over again, which of course isn't very efficient. And they worked on those mass produced fries. They also worked on, adding additives and different preservatives to kind of enhance basically the crispiness of the fry. And then I think, a decade after they kind of set out on this endeavor, the real big thing that kind of put them on the map is, I think it was JR struck a deal with Ray Kroc, the owner of McDonald's. And really that's when things, I think, exploded for both McDonald's and Simplot. It was a real mutually advantageous relationship. And then all of a sudden, fries were everywhere, and fries were better, and they were more consistent. And I think Simplot's business really took off after that.
Were those Idaho potatoes that were being sold at McDonald's?
I would assume so, but honestly, I don't know. I mean, Simplot is really active in like Eastern Oregon and Washington. And while Idaho, of course, still has the brand name for potatoes, I'm guessing, there's not a lot of difference between an Eastern Oregon potato and an Idaho potato. And who knows at the time where he was getting the stuff from. But I'm not 100% sure on that one.
So it turns out the potatoes are actually difficult to grow. There's quite a bit of factors involved. Can you explain how potatoes are seeded and the challenges in growing the perfect potato for fries?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm certainly no expert on the growing aspect of it, probably more on the frying aspect of it. But I think potatoes are really picky, especially where they like to grow. Like, I think you got to get away from the equator, both on the north and south, and then you got to be a little bit higher in elevation, which I think why areas like Idaho or Ireland or Chile, or the whole Andes region are really, productive for potatoes. And so I don't know this with absolute certainty, but I'm guessing if you were closer to the equator, potatoes would not grow nearly as well. So they almost need a little hardiness to them. You know, they're survivors, I would say, for vegetables. And so if you don't have those aspects, you're going to have a difficult time growing potatoes, in my opinion. As in terms of the process, I would say most farmers these days use seeds. They plant them in trenches. They usually put it down about 6 inches, and there's about 12 inches on each side. And then, of course, you know, they dig up those trenches after the potatoes are grown. But you actually don't need to do that. Like if you're just an individual, you know, most everyone has seen those little sprouts on potatoes that come out of the eye of the potato. Well, you can grow potatoes from those. And so if you're doing it in your backyard, you can just basically, you can almost just leave a potato on your counter for a little while, allow it to sprout, push off, you know, pull off the sprouts, they come off really easy, and then do the same thing. Dig some trenches, put them down 6 inches, and you can grow them in your backyard. So they, well, yeah, they're, I'd say, trickier than some vegetables because they can also revert, which is really interesting. Like at some point, like potatoes, they just, I don't know what it is. They will have a strain of potato and eventually it just gets ornery and it decides it wants to become toxic and it can actually revert to almost like a toxic vegetable. So they have some personality. They like hardy conditions, but nevertheless, you know, you can grow them, especially if you live in Idaho, in your backyard.
So in your expert opinion, which variety of potatoes make the best fries?
Yeah, I'm 100% biased here. So take this for what it is. But for me, it's the purple Peruvian fry. I think it's got this earthy, nutty flavor. And when I go to Boise Fry Company, which I've eaten there quite a few times in my life, I get that 90% of the time. It's with a little garlic and rosemary salt. That's by far my favorite fry that I have anywhere. I also actually really like yam fries, which a lot of people, once again, confuse for the sweet potato fry. So this is the red one, not the yellow one. Especially this time of year, I don't know, there's something about that kind of yam, the sweetness of it, and it's almost like a comfort food. It kind of reminds you of Thanksgiving. And, you know, occasionally at Boise Fry Company, we have that marshmallow sauce, which is really good. And so that's the fry that I would get like the other 10% of the time is the yam fry.
When you were creating the Boise Fry Company, did you try just every kind of potato, every way of preparation to figure out what you wanted on the menu?
For sure. We tried tons. I mean, we were asking all the purveyors, any farmers that we could get a hold of, like, hey, what kinds do you have? Send them in. We tried like fingerling potatoes. We tried a bunch of different kind of sweet potatoes. I remember we were even reaching out to farmers on the East Coast. They had a couple of varieties that we just couldn't find on the West Coast just to see if we could try them. And some of it didn't work out. Like I remember we were really fixated on this green potato. I think it was from Maine, and we could never get it. But yeah, we must have tried, you know, dozens of different types of potatoes. And while there's some that we really like we would keep it, like occasionally we bring back the Okinawa, which is an Okinawa sweet potato. It's primarily grown in Hawaii. And you know, but it's only grown real seasonally. They don't have a lot of it, so it would be really difficult for us to source it year round. So we just, you know, bring it in for like a month or two, and when it's gone type thing. And then eventually we kind of had to whittle it down to, you know, 6 to 7 different vegetables, potatoes that we knew we could get with reasonable certainty, you know, like 90% of the year. And then that's kind of what comprises the menu today, even though we do, of course, bring in, you know, Brussels sprouts, or we'll bring in some other sort of vegetable or potato once or twice a year. So.
When you are making French fries at Boise Fry Company, what is the secret that you have to making that perfect French fry? You already admitted you're an expert on the fry process.
Well, not an expert. I know more about frying than I do growing, but well, I suppose I can't divulge too much here. You know, I don't want to reveal trade secrets, but you know, I would say, you know, for your average person, if you're trying to make fries, probably the most, and you're not coating the fry in anything. Like if you're breading a fry, for example, almost you can make a good fry. That's because then the bread gets real crispy, and that's what you tend to taste over the actual vegetable inside of it. So if you're not coating it or adding anything to the potato, then I think really the most important thing to look for is the quality of the potato. You know, potatoes have been sitting around for too long. They tend to convert that starch on the inside of potato to sugar. And while in certain times that could actually make, like, especially for certain recipes, like a really like better tasting potato, in terms of frying it or baking it, it actually makes a worse fry because those sugars basically make it soggy. And it is really hard if there's a potato that has a lot of sugar in it. It's really difficult to make that thing crispy. You know, that's why some of the mass producers and big producers of French fries, and you know, they've kind of figured out ways to, you know, like cut the fries at the ideal moment, add the additives, so then those like sugars never really appear, and then they kind of stay crispy for the whole entire life. But if you're doing it the more, organic, all natural way, then yeah, making sure you're getting fresh potatoes that haven't been sitting around too much. Yeah, the fresher the better. That makes the best fry, in my opinion.
Okay, that is exciting to hear. And you also make the claim that French fries are really not that unhealthy for us. You start talking. I need to know if
Yeah.
French fries are actually a health food.
Yeah, I mean, I think they can be good. Of course, I think there's probably a little bit of tongue in cheek in that statement, but I think if you strip out, a bunch of the additives, preservatives, and chemicals that some fries do have in them, and you don't coat it with anything, so you're not breading it, you're not putting sugar on it. If it's just basically a vegetable and a good fat, so like an unsaturated or saturated fat, not a trans fat, then in my opinion, it can be healthy. It's not that dissimilar than any other, vegetable that you're going to eat or that you're going to prepare. Potatoes, of course, have antioxidants in them, which is good. And they tend to be a good, like the good carb, the slow and complex carb. I think scientists have even used potato to help with bouts of depression because of the antioxidants and different things in them. So, yeah, it can be good like almost any vegetable, but I think like anything in life, it needs to be eaten in moderation. So, I would not say that you should be eating fries every single day of the week, but I don't think you should feel guilty. It's not going to it's not going to ruin your diet if you have fries, a couple times a week.
Okay, that is excellent news for all of us who are listening. I have to ask you too, my colleagues here at the Idaho Humanities Council wanted me to ask you about tater tots. We have a fight going in our office about if tater
Yeah.
tots actually count as French fries. So what's your expert opinion on the tater tot?
Yeah, I think they do. I talk about that just a little bit in the book. I definitely think, but then of course, if you really think about a tater tot, it's essentially a shredded potato, right? A shredded potato that's put together and then fried. So then you would really be loosening the definition of a fry to like even hash browns. I mean, hash browns are essentially just flattened tater tots. And so even though, for me, it's probably, I wouldn't necessarily consider it a fry just because it's not sliced and it's kind of reconstituted potato. I mean, I definitely think it's in the fry family, I guess, is what I would say. Even at Boise Fry Company, we kind of have our own version, which we call a po' ball. We don't always have it on the menu. We just make it occasionally. And it's the same thing. We shred it up and we reconstitute it and then fry it. And, we consider it a fry at Boise Fry Company. So yeah, I would say it's in the fry family because it's still a vegetable that's been somewhat sliced, more likely shredded and then fried. And so by that broad definition, I would consider it a fry.
Okay, good news. That's good news for my team here at the
Yeah.
Humanities Council. So like many of the aspects of our culture, like food, there's a political dimension. In your book, you argued that French fries could be a part of bringing about world peace. And in these troubling times, I have to ask you about it. How do you think the humble fry and food in general can bring about peace?
Yeah, I remember when I was writing the book and I asked the editors if I should include that section. I think I sent them kind of like a preview of it. And I figured they were just going to laugh me out of the room. They're like, no, that's, I mean, because it's already kind of a silly book. It's supposed to be a kind of a coffee table book. It's not a real serious academic study of the history of French fries. But nevertheless, I thought that was maybe a little bit over the edge, but they thought it was funny. So we ended up including it. So yeah, of course, fries aren't sitting at the negotiating table and they can't necessarily bring about world peace. But I honestly think they can help. Like at this point in history, fries are everywhere. They're in like every corner of the globe. They're loved by almost everyone. I remember when we adopted our daughter from India, and she was from a very, very remote, very small area of India. And when we were there the first time meeting her, like we were just trying to find, and so we were going to this like super small restaurant in this very remote town in the middle of India, and they had fries on the menu. And this was, 10 years ago. And I was just like, this is crazy. I cannot believe there's fries on the menu here, And so, I think you'd be hard pressed to find any person or culture that doesn't love fries. I think it is really universal. I don't know if we all find some commonality there. That's something that we all can agree on, that we all love fries. Who knows? Maybe it'll just help us find more similarities in each other than differences.
I really appreciate you saying that. I think that is something so valuable about studying the humanities is that we learn how much we all have in common, how much we all share. And I do not know a single person that says no to French fries. So
Yeah,
I think you might
too
be
hard.
onto something.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about French fries. I obviously am going to be going home and making some French fries because I'll be thinking about them all day.
Yeah.
Too delicious to
Yeah.
pass up. Thank you for being with
Absolutely.
us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.